I'm the freshest in the place. Running laps with my vibe and you can't keep the pace. Head to toe while I'm dripping in style. I'm fly with $1 million smile.
Had a really good breakfast at a diner nearby. Got a little greasy, but like, yeah, grease is fuel.
Hello everybody and welcome back to Velo's all-road field test, where we've been riding and rating 6 of the newest and most interesting all-road bikes. Now actually, I should add an asterisk to that because 2 of them are distinct outliers specifically here to challenge the notion of what all-road is. Now first, for the all-road bikes, we have the Specialized Roubaix, the Stinner Carrizo Select, BMC's Road Machine, and the Lauf Uthold.
I don't know.
The Lauf Uthold. Sure. Now, for comparison's sake, those Asterix bikes, we've also got Da Vinci's new Hatchet gravel bike, with the thinking being that with the same fast 32mm tires, could it actually challenge the all-road bikes? Like, are people better off on a gravel bike with fast tires? And we've also got something on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, Specialized Athos. Now, this is like a traditional, very fast, very light road bike that also happens to fit those same 32mm Continental Grand Prix 5000 STR tires. That's a long name and I'm happy that I remembered it all. So all of these bikes, they've been fitted with those same tires, they've been run at the same tire pressure, and we've been doing all sorts of interesting testing. Now that includes some very different challenges. We've had a climbing challenge, we've had a descending challenge, we've had a vibration test, and then the boys also did a big ride. Now, unfortunately, Will had an incident with a wild flying Levy through the air and injured his collarbone, so he was only here for part of the test.
Got my little chicken wing right now.
Yeah. But he did ride a lot of the bikes. I think he rode pretty much all the bikes for the first impressions.
A little bit of time on every bike at least.
Yeah.
So.
And you also did the funnest challenge, the descending challenge, before I took you out. So we're going to get to that. But first, we're going to talk about first impressions, because the first thing we did is we sent these guys out for about a 30-minute lap on each of the bikes. And that lap included some pretty steep, tricky climbing, all sorts of tight corners, some fast, steep descents.
It's 30 minutes, or 45 or however long we were doing it, but it's also pretty intense because it's just steep up and then it's just back right down.
Yeah, exactly. So don't scoff at the length, because they also did a whole ton of riding, much longer rides, including a 100-mile ride on the bikes. So this first thing we're going to talk about, initial impressions, is exactly that. It was all about first impressions. And the first question I have, I'm going to start with you. Surprises.
Surprises? I feel like I thought I was going to really love the Stinner, and not that I didn't really love it. I loved the fit of it, but something about it just felt like it was just all right to me. It's like very, very average.
Okay.
I don't know, maybe you guys probably felt otherwise coming into this, but I don't know.
Yeah, and I think looking at that bike, maybe you might expect it to ride drastically different than the other bikes. Little steel tubes, that, I don't know if it's Celeste, but that absolutely beautiful paint
Bianchi
job.
will tell you it's not Celeste.
Yes, they definitely will.
Even though Bianchi has a different Celeste every year. They'll come at you.
They're already in my box telling me that. What about you? What were you surprised by in those early days on these bikes?
You know, I was a little bit surprised by the Stinner for similar reasons. The ride was a little bit firmer than I had anticipated it to be. I think the most surprising bike for me was the Da Vinci Hatchet Pro. I did not expect it to be as competent as it was at everything else here.
I want to take a wild guess. We've got these, the Athos is like a freaking fast and light and all those things. Did you sort of expect that Da Vinci Hatchet to be slow, heavy, kind of wooden? That would be my guess compared to these fast road bikes.
Certainly wooden feeling.
Yeah.
Like a lot of these, especially stiff gravel bikes, when they're stiff riding with a 40mm tire and you put a 32 on it, it doesn't liven up the bike. It just makes it worse.
Yeah.
And this, unique in that it didn't make it worse. just made it like a better all-road bike. I
Yeah,
think.
it was interesting during this whole field testing. We've been here for over 2 weeks testing these bikes. The Da Vinci, I kind of got the impression you were maybe like not that interested in it at first. And then the more riding that you did on it, the more stoked you got on it. And like, not to ruin the surprise, but you eventually got to the point where you're like, huh, maybe I just need one of these with some fast tires and that's all I need, which is interesting.
Yeah, yeah. Or that, some variation
Some form of
on
that,
bike.
Yeah.
More on that though.
Yeah, we'll get to that later. Josh, what were you surprised by in those early impressions?
Yeah, so, I mean, I gotta kind of say a little bit of the same thing that Alvin said, which is that's the bike that really surprised me. I thought that the BMC would be just a really solid bike. I just sort of thought that that would be the one that I would gravitate towards.
Yeah.
And that Da Vinci, I was like, I was not interested in that bike at all. Like, I've ridden fast gravel bikes.
Can't
and I
get
like
my
them.
stem low enough. Can't
Yeah,
get
I
arrow
just-
enough. It doesn't
I just-
beat me up enough.
Right, I was not into that bike, and right away it's quite surprising. It's very good.
Yeah, it's nice when that happens. I know, like, you've ridden a lot of bikes over the years. So, like, I know from experience that, like, it's when you get a bike that surprises you, that's when things get interesting. Because you start thinking about why? You know, like, it's, you question everything, you know?
Yeah, and when things work the way that you expect them to, it's almost a little hard to have that discussion, to go, well, yeah, this is what we all thought was going to happen. And so I don't know that the Da Vinci is the best or the worst or whatever, but just that it was unexpected. Now, it should also be mentioned that I sort of wonder how good it is as a gravel bike, but that's another topic.
I have a first ride review for that.
Okay.
You can read that or watch my video on Velo.
I think some of the reasons, not to go way off course here, but some of the reasons why, I mean, you said it was kind of a sporty, racy gravel bike. Some of those reasons are why it probably makes it a good, like, so-called, quote-unquote, all-road bike, possibly.
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely. But again, there are bikes that kind of fit that same mold, but then you put a narrower tire, like I tend to do on these bikes, and they fall apart.
Yeah.
And that one didn't, remarkably. I
Yeah.
really do feel, I mean, we'll talk more about it, but I really do feel like the Da Vinci kind of stumbled into something like the future.
Yeah,
I don't know.
possibly.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big claim there.
Yeah.
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 So those first impressions, the guys basically went out, they did a lap, they came back, they swapped bikes, and then they went back out again because all of this testing is all about back-to-back-to-back testing. And especially like these modern bikes, there are some big differences here. Don't get me wrong. But also at the same time, like we're seeing some, not crazy differences in geometry and all that. So it's really that back-to-back-to-back and then some more back-to-back testing that really underlines these differences. So I think that's a super, not to toot our own horn, but that's like the way to test these things, I believe.
It's a great way to do it. I've been convinced.
Yeah, it really underlines everything instead of testing them in isolation, for sure.
Yep.
We also did our challenges. Now, if you guys have been paying attention, the challenge videos have probably already all come out. If we did them correctly, they've all been released already. We did climbing challenges, descending challenges, a vibration test. Josh did a time trial, which he was strangely eager to do for some reason.
I love a good time trial.
He brought his Aero socks in.
yeah, and his shoe cover.
Yeah, and all the
shoes
things.
and-
Yeah.
Yeah.
The first challenge, though, that I want to talk about, Will, you had the funnest challenge.
The
most
descending
fun
challenge. I had probably the most dangerous challenge too, and somehow that's not how I broke my collarbone.
He survives this sketchy ass descent that we put together
Yeah.
on bikes that like he doesn't know,
Yeah.
and he's hauling ass. I was standing on the side of the road and I was like, "Slow down, dog! You're going too fast."
I almost hit one car.
The things we do.
Yeah. It wasn't a busy road.
No.
Yeah, to be clear.
Yeah, to be clear, it wasn't a busy road, but to describe the course, it had some tricky corners.
Yeah.
It was very fast. The corners had different radiuses through them. They closed up. Some of them were tight. Some of them weren't.
Yeah.
It was dry, but the road is like a rough, not super well traveled road. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's not a terrible road by any means, but certainly not a perfectly freshly paved road either. So
Yeah, exactly. So, Will, what are you looking for in a good descending bike?
Good descending bike. I mean, personally, I want a bike that is just like I think where I'm going and it goes there, which
Right.
is probably what leans more towards the race bike kind of geometry. So maybe more like the Athos, which when we did this test, that ended up being my favorite of these bikes going down.
Yeah.
But I think going back to the Da Vinci, the Hatchet, that one also astounded me on this descent. Like I would not have told you that was a gravel bike. That just felt so good on this descent.
Yeah.
So-
It's I don't have the numbers off the top of my head right now. I imagine it's a bit slacker and it's
Yeah.
a bit longer.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably a big factor in descending. Would you be willing to like sacrifice a super quick handling bike for something like that Hatchet that maybe doesn't handle so quick, but I mean, we all love to go fast on the downs, right?
Yep. I mean, Alvin, you got to descend these too. I mean,
Yeah, I want to say on that Da Vinci is really interesting in that the trail figure is on that size that we have here, 64 millimeters, which is roughly the same as that Leif Uthold.
Yep.
And it's roughly similar to that BMC road machine too.
Okay.
The bottom bracket's actually taller than those
Very,
bikes too.
very road.
Yeah, very road. It
Yeah.
is like that front center length is longer, and I think that's the difference.
yeah. I mean, it felt astounding. Like I just did not expect a bike like that to feel like that going down. It just felt at home on a first ride. So it's just kind of rare, I think, for a bike. There's definitely a few of those, especially ones I rank lower, that, especially getting on for the first time, I just did not. I just didn't connect with me instantly. But that Hatchet did. The Athos did. I've ridden the Athos before, so I had a little bit more connection there. But
Yeah. You're also incredibly consistent. Our times
Thank
were the Athos was a minute 36, and the rest of them were between a minute 36 and a minute 38. So it's not like any of these bikes were slow.
Yep.
But I got to ask you before we move on, your least favorite descending bike.
The one that ended up actually being slowest was the Lauf. And if I were to take it again, I think I could get it faster. But on that initial test, descending, I just couldn't really get it to feel like, I just couldn't quite figure it out. Like I was either kind of taking the turns too wide, and then I was taking them too narrow, and then like I was just kind of overcooking some turns, and that's really was the difference. But it was just like I couldn't figure out quite what I was trying to do.
Alvin, you mentioned some interesting stuff about the handling of that Lauf that kind of mirrors what Will said.
Yeah. Me and Josh were talking about it earlier in the individual review. It's got a short chainstay, 405. I think it's the shortest here.
Yeah, that's like road bike.
Yeah,
like,
405.
Like race bike.
Yeah.
really
It's
short.
about as short as you'll find on any bike. Like
Yeah, what is the claimed max tire clearance on that then?
35.
35?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, and so they're able to fit that in. For me, like, it took a while to connect with that bike, I think. But on the descent that we have on our local test loop here, like 2 turns in, and I was like, oh, I don't have to think as much on this. Like, and then once I just kind of decided to trust it more, like the handling is kind of quicker than you'd think for a bike
Yeah.
that rides as smoothly or soft as that.
Yep.
And for me, at least, like I was able to get enough time on it to really connect with it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I was coming around to it on the first go round of our like big ride.
Yeah.
Until I got cut short, but but I think I felt that like I was like, okay, I was understanding this bike a little bit more with time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, Josh, you did a bunch of descending on your big ride and all throughout the past few weeks.
Yeah.
What did you think of the Lauf?
Yeah, so I mean, to me, it's interesting. I felt like I didn't really connect with that bike as much. It doesn't. I feel like it's a little slower to turn in, and I've probably said this a bunch of times, depending on how it gets cut up, but. I like to turn with my hands more. I don't like to trust the rubber as much and lean as much, turn with my hips. Now, to be clear, that would be the better way to turn, but that's not who I am.
Let's not talk about better.
And so for a bike like that, it's a little slower in that, and it's a little more difficult to get it to do what I want it to do.
Did it feel twitchy? Is that how you would describe it? Or
It is surprising how much road feedback comes through, I will say. I don't know if I would call it twitching necessarily, but
yeah, it just didn't quite as gel with it as much.
I get it.
Okay, let's talk about climbing. Before you go down, You got to go up. Elvin did a lot of up. We set a climbing course, bunch of switchbacks, none of it crazy steep, but Elvin rode the same wattage on all 6 of the bikes, and we had some pretty different times, a pretty big time spread between the bikes. The Athos was the fastest. Now, I think that Athos weighs, what, guys, like 13 pounds, 14 pounds? I don't know.
13 and a half pounds, I think.
Yeah, something absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
Given that you did the same power for all the bikes, the Athos was the fastest, is it purely down to weight?
You know, so I should caveat, because people in the comments are going to be like, oh, it's so hard to do that same power over, like, on a climb like that. And it is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you look at, like, I look at my splits there, like, by power output, I'm within, like, 3 watts or
Yeah.
2 watts of everything there on all of those times. Even still, like, it's just hard to get it right where you need to be
Of course.
to keep it the same on the gradients.
This is not lab testing. Not to
Yeah.
disqualify what we're saying,
Yeah.
but this is like we're out in the real world.
Yeah.
Doing the things with the wind and things we can't control.
Right.
And, yeah.
And that being said, when we did the rankings of the bikes,
Mm-hmm.
I was really close to the actual time rankings, despite there being like a 20-something second spread.
Something
or
like that. Yeah.
Or 16
I
seconds.
think it was
spread.
16 seconds
Yeah,
overall.
yeah. So the key things that you'll feel are, for me at least, I want a bike that I can feel like I can get into a rhythm with.
Yeah.
Some of the bikes, like, you feel like maybe there's too much flex out back.
Okay.
And even for me, I'm relatively lightweight. That can
Yeah,
result
but the
in a little bit of
ponies,
bobbing.
the ponies you have, just that
Yeah.
frame, just wow.
I guess so. I guess that's exactly what happens. I'm
Yeah.
so strong. And yeah, I mean, you want a bike that can get you into a rhythm, and if a bike's too stiff, then it's just going to be jarring, and you're going to be like kind of using a little bit of energy to like keep yourself above the saddle.
Yeah.
But if it kind of bounces and floats a little bit, then that doesn't help either, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was really interesting. Like, the Athos was in first place.
Yeah.
That
Not
was-
a surprise.
Yeah, not a surprise. I expected it to be in first place because it is legitimately a fantastic climber.
Yeah.
And at the bottom of the list was the Stinner, which I don't really know why it was at the bottom of the list. Like, it felt fine, but I had a feeling that it was like slightly below the other bikes.
Yeah. We haven't weighed the bikes here, sort of on purpose. Mentally, I don't want those numbers in your head, to be honest.
Yeah.
I don't want you to know the numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've kind of kept that separate, but it is the heaviest bike here.
Yeah, it is. You can kind of just feel it. And second place was the Roubaix, right?
Yeah.
That wasn't that far behind the Athos.
No.
And-
With an unlocked Future Shock.
Yeah, and to be clear, that Future Shock when you're climbing doesn't really do anything. You're not
Even out of
putting
the
that much
saddle?
weight. I mean, I was never out of the saddle. You
It,
gotta
it
keep
does not
consistent.
have that, you know, when you talk about riding with suspension and climbing, often you get there's like you can almost ride a wave of it.
Yeah.
And can be kind of fun, but you don't get that with this Roubaix.
Yeah.
Yeah, that Future Shock, like with suspension, like you're normally like in some sort of sag point.
Yep.
There's no sag if like it takes a certain amount of weight for it to dig in.
It's funny, as someone who comes from a mountain bike background and now just does a ton of gravel riding with a suspension fork, I look at the Future Shock and I kind of want to poo-poo it. You know, it's like, because it's not
Yeah.
doing all the things that a suspension fork does. But I think I have to also realize that this is an entirely different world, and like out of the saddle performance
Yeah.
is a big factor. Like I have all the different suspension forks, and I've tried them all. And guess what? When I'm out of the seat, moving, working hard up a steep climb,
Yeah.
you know, a little bit, but a little bit counts. So I think it's neat that the Future Shock adds comfort, but without the drawbacks.
Yeah.
Even on the climbs.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You did some climbing on these bikes. Do you have a favorite?
Favorite climbing bike?
Besides the Athos.
Besides the Athos,
Yeah.
you can even make it even harder for me.
Yeah.
I don't know if the Roubaix comes to mind, but I think it just managed to do everything pretty well, which is I think what you at the end of the day you want in a all-road bike.
Yeah.
It's that one that doesn't really have like a true like, oh, it just completely sucks at this one thing. It doesn't have anything like that. So maybe I'll go with that because that comes
Yeah.
to mind. But yeah.
I mean, that makes sense. It also fits like the all-road kind of definition, like the kind of bike that you could travel anywhere to.
Yeah.
Take it with you. and it's going to be fine. If you want to lock the thing out, you can lock the thing out, but it's going to excel everywhere. It's got the tire clearance, it's got the gearing.
Yeah, I mean, and like out here, at least I live out here, and a lot of the rides I do that sometimes I'll take a gravel bike, and I'm really only having the gravel bike for like 20% of the ride max.
Yeah.
And I was just like jumping into some of the like light gravel roads alongside the paved roads here on the Roubaix, and it's perfect for it. Like yeah. So like, if I don't think I'm gonna go out and buy a Roubaix, but like a Roubaix would be a very perfect solution for what I end up riding.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Josh, I know you really just wanted to do time trial tests every single day of this field test that we were here, but you did do some climbing too.
I did.
Pretend the Athos doesn't exist.
Yeah.
We know it won. Pick a different
Well,
climbing
so
bike.
I do want to mention one thing about the Athos and the climbing, because I've spent quite a bit of time climbing on the Athos, and it takes some getting used to, I think. When we talk about that rhythm, it's so light that it is easy to like throw it in a way that you don't quite get the rhythm. And Alvin has ridden it more than I have. So I don't know that I would have necessarily picked it as the winner anyway, in terms of, you know, the feels of climbing with it. It's definitely the most fun to climb with. But in terms of my favorite climber, I think I'm going to go with the BMC. Because it's very stiff and not harsh, but like you never feel like the power transfer is lost, and it's all quite simple in a way. And I've talked a little bit through the different things about how I find the Roubaix a little overcomplicated.
Yeah.
And the BMC is just simple. It's stiff and it climbs, and I find it very easy to settle into the saddle and really get into a rhythm with it.
Yeah. It's funny that the BMC is such a funny thing. We're going to get to final rankings and what bike suits who best later on in the video. But I will say that BMC was sort of like either middle of the road or like towards the top for all the challenges. And I've been listening to you guys talk for the past few weeks. And the BMC just seems like it's good at everything. A bit of a sleeper. I mean, it's not a sleeper because it's bright blue and it looks great. But it also, like, it didn't win anything. It wasn't like, you know, the winner for any of these challenges. But it just seems like all around, right?
Yeah. Yep. I mean, I think it was really... It is hard to fault that bike because there's nothing that it seems to do badly.
Yeah.
I also think of all the bikes, if you were to show up on a group ride, it would be the most likely to be mistaken for that brand's like race bike.
Yeah.
It just kind of looks like a race bike.
Absolutely.
It looks fast sitting still.
Yeah.
Like the frame shapes, I think it's easily the best looking bike here, personally.
I do want to mention in those time trial times that the BMC actually won.
Oh, it did?
By a few
That's true.
seconds. Yeah,
That is true.
And that the Athos was, I think, second to last place in that.
Yeah.
It was all
checks
within
out.
a couple seconds of one another.
Yeah.
But you also were saying that you thought you were really
Yeah.
comfy on that bike too.
Let's
On the BMC.
Let's
Yeah.
get right into the time trial thing. I want
Okay.
to describe it here for the people. We had a flat route. There was definitely some wind and
Yes.
stuff going on. Pretty flat route. Josh got in his aero position. And the idea was you're going to hold the same aero position on all the bikes and the same power wattage, with the thinking that the more comfortable you are, you'd be able to hold that position for longer and presumably, you know, go faster for longer, right? Tell me
Well,
about
I
the
think
test.
that it's a little bit of that test is a little bit of, it's really kind of testing the aero capabilities, right?
Yeah.
Because we're holding a similar wattage, and it's straight and flat.
But I'm also interested in your subjective
Right.
take, like how you feel in that aero position as well, too. We have the times here. The BMC 316, the Athos second to last 321, the slowest bike. Da Vinci at 322. So I mean, the BMC was like notably. That counts. You know, in 3 minutes.
Absolutely. I think it really goes back to what I said about the climbing. It's the same thing where you're able to, that bike just has really good power transfer,
Yeah.
and it really disappears under you. And sometimes that can feel almost on the edge of like it's boring, but like that it's okay. It's a bike that never holds you back. It really just, it does the thing that you ask it to do, and it disappears under you, and that's great. And so when you're climbing with it, you're really able to get into that rhythm, and it's the same thing with a time trial. Climbing and time trials are in some ways quite similar, and you just need to find that rhythm, and you need to hold that power.
Yeah, exactly. The slowest of the bunch, 322, the Da Vinci. Did it feel slower?
I don't remember exactly what I said about that bike. I was surprised with it on that on that test.
Yeah.
The one that really kind of felt slow was the steel bike, was the Stinner. Yeah, you know, the thing, I remember that the Athos was the one that I thought was going to be, that felt fast to me.
Second last.
Yeah, and it was not.
Second last, everybody.
Yeah.
We like being surprised.
Yeah.
Makes it way more interesting. Yeah. Semi-related question. Will, you're going out to buy an all-road bike. Are you taking aero into consideration for specifically for that all-road category?
I think in so much as that I don't want just the like slowest, just round tube bike.
Yeah.
Then in that case, I mean, like a lot of these bikes do have aerodynamics in mind. If
Yeah.
it, you know, it's not like the main thing. You know, you don't have like these giants or like these airfoil,
Snow airfoil
tube shapes.
cam tube shapes.
Yeah, exactly. But they're like, you know, the Roubaix certainly for a while was one of their faster bikes. Then they made the tarmac faster.
Yeah.
But like it's something that these designers are having in mind. I mean, all the cables are internal at this point.
Yeah.
I guess except the Roubaix doesn't have the brake cable. I need to see the bike in front of me. But yeah, more or less, these bikes, especially from the bigger brands, they are incorporating like what they've learned from the aero bikes into these all around all road bikes.
Yeah, basically. Go ahead.
That's something that we're seeing more and more, and it's like I've seen brands say like, yeah, this isn't an aero bike, but we already did the work, so we just used the tube shape.
Yeah.
Like,
That's what I was actually just going to say. Like, if a brand is making a new bike, they've done all their aero homework for like whatever bike they made 2 years before. Why not make the all-road bike aero if they can make it comfortable? Alvin, are you looking for an aero all-road bike? Is that a factor, or do you care?
I think aero really impacts people who aren't particularly strong on the bike, and arguably it might impact people who are like less strong on the bike than people who are stronger. I would say, because you can overcome, unless you're trying to go like high speeds all the time,
like he
in
was
which case
directly
the aero
calling me
matters.
I know. I feel personally attacked
Yeah,
here.
I feel attacked.
I'm not trying to attack you guys by any means. That being said, if you didn't want to look like you're worried about being weak
Yeah.
or whatever, we're done
Well, so
talking about that.
here's the thing with
So-
with slower, if you go slower on an aero bike, or if you go slower and you're more aerodynamic, because you're slower, you're out there longer, the aero gains actually add up more, even though the numbers don't.
Even though you're going slower.
Yeah, well, it's just like, okay, so if it takes you an hour to do something versus it takes you 30 minutes to do something, and one bike is X watts faster,
Yeah.
then you get more time in like getting that wattage.
Why would you say no to something
Right.
to help you?
Yeah, exactly. If everything else is held equal, why wouldn't you choose the bike that would make you faster?
Yeah, exactly.
That's it. Unless you thought it was ugly, which is a real factor, and that's something I think about all the time.
Yeah, as you should. You should want to look at your bike. You know, your
Yeah.
bike should be good looking.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we managed to get Josh out of his time trialing for, about half an afternoon. And we sent him up to do what I think is probably the least fun test. It's the vibration test.
I had the most fun watching it.
Yeah.
I had a lot of fun watching it. That was the best
I
one.
definitely had some good heckles, 100%. So let me set the scene for you here. Our vibration test, basically we found a gravel road, and to be honest, it was probably on the outer limits of what we would call all road. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah, it was definitely a road that I would only ride if I needed to get home, and dinner was right there.
Will's
and
like,
there
I
was
wouldn't
no other
ride
way
it.
around.
Or a short connector to another spot.
to an amazing road.
Yeah.
I generally would not take my
Yeah.
all-road bike on that.
Yeah,
I'd hesitate to take someone on a gravel bike on that road, to be clear, too.
fair enough.
I think going up is fun.
Yeah, I actually rode one of the bikes. I can't remember one of the bikes up, and it was fine. The
Better than
Roubaix,
going-
actually.
better than
Might have
going
been the
down,
Roubaix.
eh?
Yeah.
Anyway, an extreme test case.
Yeah, it
To
was
say the least.
the outer limits of what we would call all road. It was a shortest section, and we sent Josh down it, and just launched him down it. No brakes!
Yeah, literally.
We did two separate things here during each run. Every bike had a bear bell on it, and I was standing just off course where the course was the roughest. I had a decibel meter, and we measured how loud the bell was, with the idea being the louder the bell, the rougher the bike. Again, we're not doing lab tests here, everybody. Don't crawl down my throat. The other thing we did is we filled a water bottle for each of his run. We put it on the seat tube. We took the lid off. and we had a look how much water spilled out. Now, none of these are, like...
You know what
Lab
good
tests.
science is? Good science leads to more questions.
Yeah,
and so
I
we
have a
did
lot of
amazing
questions.
science.
Exactly. Now, to be fair, basically all of the bikes lost the same amount of water.
Like I said, questions.
Questions. Many questions. All of the bikes were within around 10 decibels of each other when they came by.
That's a huge spread.
Yeah, decibels are actually, that's actually kind of a big spread.
Okay.
with
Yeah,
decibels.
that's a huge spread. Yeah.
Fair enough. But they also felt quite different, didn't they?
Yeah, it was like drastically different.
Tell me which one was your favorite.
Roubaix, far and away, like
No surprises.
not even close. That one was the best. And I should also paint the picture. They're not kidding about the no brakes thing. You already heard me say that I don't like to descend. Let me
why
tell
we
you,
made
I
them do it.
definitely don't like descending on gravel and with 32 mil tires.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, no brakes because we need to get the best reading. I'm like, oh god. But
Yeah.
the Roubaix, it's pretty amazing. It really floats over that.
Describe the Future Shock. We know, what it does, but just describe the feeling.
It almost feels like you can almost forget how rough you're riding over. Now, I didn't have to, it's not true suspension because it doesn't do anything to help keep the tire in contact with the road surface.
Mm-hmm.
However, I didn't need it to in that section. All I had to do was go down this section and not die.
Yeah.
And and it float. Your hands basically stay still and the bike moves underneath.
Yeah.
And you can almost, even on that super rough test, you can almost feel like it's smooth.
Yeah. And this was just a short section of gravel road. It was like, I don't know, 300 feet long or whatever. But, extend this out over you like to do 7-8 hour rides.
Yeah.
You cut through some gravel. It's a long ass day. You're hitting bumps and shit. And Will, you got to ride the Future Shock here too. I think that could be a huge plus for somebody who's doing this sort of stuff.
Yeah, or even you can also adjust how much you leave it open. So if you just leave it halfway open when you just are on a road that's maybe a little rough, like a tarmac that is maybe needs to be paved in the next year or two.
Yeah.
That's I think a good in between, just a little compromise, just a little bit of cush, a little bit of comfort there.
Yeah. Adjusting.
I do want to mention to Will, so one of the things that Will said about that Future Shock and descending with it is that it made things a little bit vague. But
Yeah.
I, on the long ride, tightened it up and it descended like a whole new bike.
Yeah.
I mean, it really
How much time did you spend with it unlocked on that ride? The long road ride. We're going to talk about that next. 80%?
No, 90. I mostly left it unlocked because I feel like on the flats and just all the time, you can just leave it unlocked and it's fine. And I sort of felt like that's the point of that thing, so I left it unlocked. But one of the stops, you guys challenged me to lock it, and hilariously, the whole next section was super rough. And
Another vibration test.
yes.
Yeah.
No brakes for
So
Josh.
I did ride with it locked through that, and it's the same thing as when you're on the gravel. You think that it's not doing that much, and then you lock it out, and you're like, wow, it does so much.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, pretty cool. What did you think of the Future Shock?
I thought it was really impressive, honestly. I get why it's there. I get why Specialized has put so much money into it.
Yeah.
And they put it on multiple bikes too.
Yeah, it's on something like 4 or 5 different platforms that
Oh, really?
Specialized has. Yeah, not
Wow.
just the Roubaix.
Okay.
It's on their other bikes. Yeah, I was really impressed. To be clear, they do have different tiers of Future Shock, right? So this was, I think, 3.3, so it's their nicest damper that they have. They have other versions. They are backwards compatible, so you can put a newer.
Are the
damper
others
on the other
non-adjustable?
bikes. They don't have the adjustability of this
Okay,
one
something to keep in mind.
to the level of this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's pretty cool. That being said, again, I've mentioned this, but there's a reason why people have the Future Shock delete kits out there.
Right.
And that's because they're living with their bikes for several years or something like that.
Yeah.
And so that is something that I worry about. One thing I will say is watching Josh descend on that really poorly surfaced. I'm not even gonna call it a road. Yeah, it's not even a road. The grade
Yeah.
that he was going down. I think the only bike that really came close to me visually, as far as that handlebar smoothness, was the Lauf.
Oh.
I don't know if you felt that way.
Yeah, so I don't remember that feeling quite so amazing. So that's interesting to hear.
Which of the bikes beat you up the most on that short, rough section?
The Stinner, for sure.
The steel bike.
Yeah, the steel bike.
Steel is real rough.
Uncomfortable.
Yeah, steel's
Yeah.
real rough.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's not what I expected. I wonder how much of that is down to those wheels, though, with the carbon spokes and fairly tall carbon rim.
I mean, I would say that there's a couple of things going on. One is that this, as Alvin has talked about, there are different types of steel, and this is not, the highest end steel. But also, I think, and maybe I'm wrong by here, but I would think that steel does better on muting road, like small vibrations, not big thuds.
Impacts.
Yeah.
It's not suspension.
Yeah.
It's more just like
Yeah.
damp the
just
the
quiet
short
things out
vibrations.
and the road buzz.
Yeah. Before we move on to talk about the big ride, I want to ask you about two bikes, the outliers, the asterisks for this
Yeah.
test. The first one, you were on a gravel road. You were on a gravel bike,
Yeah.
but it had 32 millimeter tires.
Yeah.
How did the gravel bike feel?
It didn't stand apart from the road bikes.
Okay.
I mean, it was another bike, and
Yeah.
it was in there in the rankings where it felt at the time. But like, you weren't like, oh my god, I'm on a gravel bike, and this is totally different.
Yeah. What about when you rode the Athos down? Were you like, oh my god, I'm on a road bike, I'm dying?
Yeah, the Athos is not what that is meant for.
Yeah, 100% out of the element.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it felt like it.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a surprise.
I did ride the Athos at another time on some like sort of like a gravel path, but like smooth, like I don't even know how to describe it, almost like sandy kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it did quite well there, but you're not asking a lot of it, so
No.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Aside from just messing about with all these challenges, you guys actually did some pretty big rides too.
Yeah.
100-mile ride,
Yeah.
which we mixed it up a little bit because we met you out there with other bikes, so you could do 50 miles on one bike and 50 miles on another bike. So I want to start with Josh. What is the first bike you rode, and then what did you switch to?
So I rode the Roubaix out,
Yeah.
and I rode the Athos back.
Specialized versus specialized.
Specialized versus specialized.
Thoughts?
It was terrifying changing bikes.
Really?
Yeah.
So it feels like
Oh
a
my
strong
gosh.
word.
Well, no, I don't. Not actually change. I said it a little like not the changing of the bike, but so you get out there and the ride is like fairly flat until you get to these big rollers.
Yeah.
And the wind is coming from both directions. It's on the ocean.
Of
and
course.
It's very gusty. And I had come out on the Roubaix, felt fine. Like there's definitely wind going on, but I'm like, this is fine. And then I changed to the Athos, and I was asked to descend. It was they're rollers, but right as you come away from the lighthouse, that was like it's a pretty
Hurricane.
big descent, and it's so windy,
Yeah.
and that bike moves around.
I immediately have a question for you. If the Athos is in front of me and the Roubaix is in front of me, neither of them have like particularly deep wheels on them, but the Roubaix frame has deeper tubing basically everywhere. If I was to think one bike would suck in the crosswind more than another bike, I would have thought it was the Roubaix that would suck more than the Athos.
So I would, if you had asked me
Suck
before,
is a technical term.
yeah.
We're
If
using
you
it
had
in reviews
asked
now.
me though, if somebody on the street had been like, "Hey, I think because the Athos is light, it's going to move around in the wind, and and I would have been like, "Absolutely not! You are completely wrong."
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, because it is. When you think about a light bike, even that is an exceptionally light bike, but as a system weight, so my weight versus the water bottles and the frame, so you get down to that frame weight, and it's just very small percentage. And then they're round tubes and pretty low wheels. I would have said, no way, you are a crazy person. That is not going to be affected by the wind. And it is affected by the wind.
Yeah.
It moves around, and I wonder if it maybe doesn't move around as much as you think, but there's a lot of feedback in a way that there isn't on the all-road bikes. So it could just be that you feel everything.
It's just stiffer. And
It just, yeah.
kicking back more.
Yeah.
I think the wheels being lightweight and the inertia or lack thereof that comes with such light wheels might have something to do with that.
That
Sure.
could definitely be a factor too.
Yeah.
But that's what's great about the field test. We've said this a bunch of times. And you go back to back. I would,
Okay.
you know, when I'm riding that Athos other times, I wouldn't have described it necessarily like that.
Yeah.
But that switch in the high winds and then descending,
Yeah.
like just to go one from the other, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to die.
Will, you live here,
Yep.
just down the road.
Yep.
It's freaking windy here, my man.
Yep.
This is not the place for big, deep wheels or your time trial bike, is it?
Yeah, I mean, you'll see the max. I mean, I've run like a 50 sometimes, but like really, it's more like a 40. Like a Zip 303 is about like the depth that I want out here.
Yeah.
Especially if part of my commute involves going across the Golden Gate Bridge, which
Oh.
really beautiful, but like
Exciting.
it's
The bridge is terrifying.
It's
It
the
is so
worst part of
terrifying.
every ride out here.
Have you ever been blown off a bike here?
No, not blowing off a bike, but I feel like
Until you met me. But the wind hasn't taken you out anyway.
hasn't taken me out, but like I am frequently riding like feels like a 45-degree angle.
Yeah.
And then you hit like a span or like a beam, and then like the wind goes away for a second, and you're like, whoa, and then you go back, and then you're like,
Yeah.
So
And I mean, that is a factor. People
So-
have to take all that stuff. Just like, you know, if you live somewhere where there's climbing, you have to think about the wind as well. If it's always
yeah.
windy where
So
you
I'm
are.
like shallow wheels out here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before we move on, I want you to tell me some good things about the Athos on that long ride.
It's interesting. So the Athos on a long ride is not a smart move. If that's your thing and you want to be smart about it,
See, I
that's
feel like
not
he's
the
really
right.
changed his tune
No,
over the last
here's the
time.
thing.
He has. Mr.
No.
Arrow over here.
Let me come back. The Athos is not the smart move, but I still loved it.
I can get behind that.
I absolutely loved it. It's not efficient. It's not the most comfortable, but I loved it. And also, I was riding it on the second half, right?
Yeah.
So I should be more tired. And yet, Alvin and I absolutely cooked on the like. We were doing rotations. At one point, we were like kind of near the end, as we were getting back to the town.
Yeah.
I started calling out 3-minute rotations, and we were just eating those miles. And the Athos should not be right for that. It's not right because it moves around. There's too much. It's too aggressive of a fit. There's too much like road feedback. Like nothing about it is right. And yet, that's what I loved being on.
Why? Before I go to Alvin, you gotta tell me
Yeah,
why.
no, absolutely. So why did I love it? Because like I ride 100 miles a lot, but 100 miles is still 100 miles. You can get near the end, you're still tired. And even when your muscles are kind of tired and you don't want to push it, it pulls. It pulls. It's like, go.
Inspiring.
Yeah, inspiring. It's like,
Yeah.
stand on this climb and sprint a little bit here, even though you have another 30 miles
Yeah.
and you've got 70 miles in.
Maybe it wasn't the right bike.
Maybe not.
Yeah, but I love it. I really do.
Okay, if you had to choose, right now you're only taking one home, you gotta live with it for 2 years. Is it the Roubaix or the Athos?
It is absolutely the Athos.
Okay.
And wait, I want to say one more thing, which is that I had thought about this to the earlier answer there. The Roubaix, or not the Roubaix, the Athos, what it really is on the long ride, it's like underbiking. It's not the right bike, but it is fun.
Yes.
And I would choose the Athos if that's the bike I'm leaving here.
That's a
I get
term
to,
I
right?
understand.
I'm fighting you guys for this.
Yes. I think
can
you're
have it.
probably only fighting Alvin.
Actually, I have to fight Specialized, but
Yeah, exactly.
Fair enough.
Yeah, my wife has an Athos. I can ride hers too.
There you go.
Yeah.
Alvin, you did the same ride. What bike did you ride out, and what bike did you ride back?
Yeah, so I started on the Stinner Carrizo Select, and I really liked that bike. I didn't feel like I was losing anything there. It was just we were out for a good time. That bike is great for wanting to have a good time,
Yeah.
I would say. No complaints there. Also doubly so because I built it for myself, frankly.
Yeah.
So like the
Perfect
reach,
fit.
yeah, the reach
would've
was
thought?
right, the bar choice
The
was
wheels
right.
you liked.
Yeah, the wheels I want. I mean, like I had other wheels that I wanted to do, but to match this, I had another set of wheels to put
and
on.
people are going to think that's cheating.
Yeah.
But I think that's part of the thing with the Stinner. That's
Yeah.
the whole point.
It's so easy to do a custom build with that bike, and it's almost encouraging you to do a custom build and get it how you want it to be.
I want to hear something negative about the Stinner on that big ride.
It doesn't do the like. You talked a little bit about the small vibrations that like steel does a good job of. I think modern steel, specifically that Columbus Zona tube set, again doesn't do as well as like kind of higher end steel. Like I did feel more of those, like that buzziness.
Less
than you
refined
would
ride,
think.
probably.
Yeah, I would say so. Like the bigger hits, like if I hit a pothole type of thing, it reacted kind of like a steel bike. But overall, it kind of takes some of the things I like about steel, some of the other things I didn't like about steel, kind of the higher weight and the lack of stiffness compared to a carbon frame, and then it combines some of the things I don't like about carbon, which is kind of some of the stiffness and maybe a little bit of the lack of refinement.
Yeah.
So overall, I really liked it, but the vibrations was an odd and surprising thing.
Okay. You switched bikes. We met you out there. What did you get on?
The DaVinci Hatchet Pro, which
It sort of surprised me that that you wanted to take that bike out. I thought you would have picked, one of the speedier, like pure, more road bikes. But
Yeah.
you've been falling more and more in love with that thing throughout this
yeah,
test.
yeah. I mean, I had thought for the longest time the right road bike for most people is an Athos with more head tube. Like people
Yeah.
just deserve fewer spacers underneath their stem or the ability to get their bars even higher. The Athos to me just strips everything down, and that's great. That being said, like being on a DaVinci, handled great, I think, as a road bike. The kind of like stiffness and firmness that I felt like riding it as a gravel bike didn't matter as much with the road tires. And the handling was on point. I was able to get into a rhythm, as we were talking about, pretty easily. I think the only thing that was, and I keep harping on about this, was the saddle.
Yep.
Which was itself the hatchet there.
Yeah.
But like you swap the saddle out, and it was a great bike for that. Honestly.
Now, I do want to remind you that you had one descending moment that you should probably talk about.
I'm not blaming that on the
You
bike.
didn't tell me about
I'm
this.
not blaming that on the bike. So I have that on video. You don't need to show that. That descending.
Cut to that.
Wow! Woo! Yeah, not my proudest moment, but I went pretty darn wide on a descent. We had just gone off of like the Point Reyes peninsula thing, like where the lighthouse is, and on that fast right-hander sweeping descent, I went pretty darn wide, and I'm gonna not blame it on the bike. I'm gonna blame that on me.
Okay.
Hold on there. You just weren't used to the handling, I assume.
Maybe, or I was like a little bit like fried or something. Like
If a-
we were 60-ish miles into the ride. Like,
Yeah. Longer bike, presumably, I don't want to use the term lazy, but it probably required a stronger hand.
Yeah, but like if you you figure it out relatively quickly. Like, okay, this isn't like a typical gravel bike almost. Like it's not lazy. I wouldn't call it lazy by any means. I really do think it just was me not thinking.
So
I had to think about it a little bit to be like, oh, this dumb bike, but sometimes bikes are good.
So at the time, I think what you had mentioned is that you really felt like it was your mistake, but you wanted to load it up more, and you were
Yeah.
just like, oh, right, I need to do that.
Yeah, I think that is right, and I don't know what that was necessarily, but I definitely came out of that thinking the right thing I should have done was put more weight on that front wheel to have it turn in some more, and instead I went wide. So, thankfully there was no car.
Yeah. Fortunately, there was a car for us. So that kind of leads me to my next question. What if you were doing just a whole bunch of road riding, big long rides, a little bit of gravel here and there? Would you be happy owning the Hatchet with fast tires? I know that's not what it's meant for.
So that's the question, is because it's marketed as a gravel bike, and I'm sure whatever DaVinci did there, like the carbon layup was kind of designed to be kind of more durable, like a gravel bike, you hope it to be. And so as a result, it is heavier. I don't know how heavy the bike is, but it definitely feels heavier than a lot of these other bikes here.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. I would be interested in that geometry with that tire clearance with maybe a more road-centric layup. I think that would be the answer.
Okay.
And I think that is something that I would really want to take home with me.
Yeah. Fair to say, though, before we move on and pick some winnings and do the final rankings here, that Hatchet was sort of the surprise of the test, right?
Yeah.
We brought it here to sort of ask the question, can this do all road things? But also have a much wider performance envelope and correct me if I'm wrong, but the impression that I'm getting from all of you is the answer is yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe the answer is the Da Vinci is, a stand-in, and there could be a different gravel bike. It's hard to say. Is that the final answer on the gravel bike that's your all-road bike?
Maybe not.
Maybe not. But, Alvin especially has been talking about this idea of what is the future of an all-road bike? Mm-hmm. Maybe it's a fast gravel bike.
I think it is. I think it absolutely is. Maybe with a different carbon layup, but that I feel like I've seen the future. I want to make a couple tweaks to it, but it's that Canadian jammer over there.
Yes, great.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, guys, we got to do some final rankings. We got to pick favorites. We have to be very decisive about this. Let's get into that. I already think I know the answer for this first question, but the best bike for someone spending more time than they should on some light gravel roads, Will?
I'm giving it to the Roubaix.
Over the Hatchet.
Well, yeah, I got that. I mean, the Hatchet is just a gravel bike, but that's a great question now.
Yeah.
You got me second guessing myself.
And that's why they're here.
Yeah. I mean, I think I still want to go through Roubaix.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair.
I'm absolutely going with the Roubaix. I'm not even going to overthink it more than that. I talked to somebody while we were doing this test, and they were describing their rim brake CX bike that they use for like farm roads in the middle of the country. And we looked up the geometry. The Roubaix is a better gravel bike than that bike that they were using, and it's a very capable road bike. That's absolutely the bike that I'm going with. And part of that is because I'm a right tool for the job kind of guy, and so a little bit what Will started to think about was, well, that's just a gravel bike, and if you want a gravel bike, I would probably pick a more capable gravel bike. But then if you're looking if we're picking all road bike, but you're spending more time on gravel or a lot of time on gravel, Roubaix.
Yeah. Okay. I think that makes sense. You're all impressed by the Hatchet, but it's probably not the answer for the all road with very light gravel now and then.
Yeah, I would say so. If I could choose my own component specification, I'd probably choose the road machine with the 1x drivetrain. Make sure I could fit a 40, because that thing freaking rips. And then if I can get that 1x13 SRAM cassette back there,
that would be a very interesting build for sure.
Yeah, I think that would tackle everything, honestly. And I think that is maybe a future thought experiment.
Yeah. Okay, well, speaking of the BMC, now I'm going to make you guys pick the best bike for someone who's looking for speed on the road and is essentially not ever going to touch even the smoothest of gravel.
I mean, in my mind, I'm going BMC, but also I think the Lauf in there was a pretty fast, just good road bike.
Just all around.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Although I don't think it would be great as an off-road, primarily bike.
Yeah,
so.
and that does make sense. Also, that paint job. Good Lord, I love it.
Yeah.
You loved it. I'm whatever about it.
Josh.
I'm glad you loved it.
No time for it.
So, first of all, that was a leading question. Speaking of BMC, tell me what you think.
That was the whole idea.
However, I'm going to agree with you.
Yeah.
I do think that you could probably do... The reality is, the gravel that I often ride, you could do it on that just fine, I think, honestly. And it'll take up to a 36, I think. And so, I think that bike would be great. But really, that bike is aimed at... It is a fast road bike that's just a little shorter and a little taller. And it's it's the one that gets closest to a race bike. And like Will said, most people wouldn't even... I don't think people would pick it out of a lineup and be like, oh, that's the all-road bike.
It looks extremely fast. And I'm not here to review the bikes. I'm just here to host. I did do a whole 12 and a half miles on that BMC before I smoked a car.
Yeah.
It felt very fast.
Yeah.
Yeah. You were raving about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It felt like I was traveling through time on that thing.
Yeah, what more could you want from a bike?
Right? Are you going to pick the BMC? Or are you going to mix it up?
It's a good question. I think the best bike for speed on the road Probably the road machine.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Lauf comes really close just because I found that I could pedal through things that I couldn't necessarily like pedal through on some of the other bikes outside maybe the Roubaix. But I was pretty happy for it. That being said, the road machine gives you much more of that feeling of going fast than a lot of these other bikes.
It
So-
sounds fast. Like,
Yeah.
it has that like.
It does. It has
whoa.
it's. I don't have a good explanation for that because those wheels are not that deep.
No.
Yeah,
I
but
like
it does.
it though.
It does make
Yeah.
the noises.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love the speed noises. Maybe the BMC is the answer for our next question. Just the best overall bike. Now, this is not your personal favorite, but you know, if somebody came to you, they live in an average place, they do average riding, they're
I hope they wear beige too.
they drive a beige Corolla
There
with a
you
tissue
go.
box up by
Yes,
the back window.
perfect.
You know, Will, what are you recommending for somebody like that who just wants, a normal fast road bike that they're comfortable on?
Oh, me.
All road, sorry.
I mean, and it's just like your average beige driving person.
Not that that's a bad thing.
I mean, it's a toss up there for me between the Roubaix and the BMC, and I think I might have to go Roubaix. It just feels more like
Good.
normal, standard.
Yeah.
And the BMC feels just a little bit more road oriented, like a little bit faster.
Yeah. Good.
Not that most people couldn't handle it, but I don't know. That's how I feel.
I think these guys are going to go with the blue road machine, so I like your answer.
I mean, that one's nice because you could probably do more with it. I mean, it'll fit wider tires, and if this person starts going, maybe I want to do a little, they're gravel curious, you could totally do that on that bike.
Yeah.
I am going to choose the BMC though, because when people come to me, I don't want to make things complicated for them. When I have to start getting into the this and the that of why they should pick something, I start to wonder if that's the right solution. So if someone says, I want a bike that feels good on the road, it's not comfortable, it's not gonna scare me in the descents.
Also be inspiring.
Yeah.
Make you go fast.
Then all of those things, it's just such a simple answer to see the BMC. So you don't have to qualify it with anything. Well, you don't have to ask questions. Yeah, go get the BMC road machine. You're gonna be happy.
So we got one vote for the road machine. We got one vote for the Roubaix. My vote doesn't count, but it'd be the BMC. Alvin?
What kind of Corolla are they driving? Are they driving
Corolla
a GR Corolla?
Definitely not.
Okay, if they're not and they're driving a beige Corolla, chances are they're extremely pragmatic.
Yeah.
And they're pragmatic with their money as well. In which case, you choose the Lauf every time.
That is
good
an
point.
unexpected answer.
Yeah, it's like half the price of these other bikes. It's not quite, but for the Force Rival Access build
Who
that
brought
we
this
had
guy
here,
with the common sense?
it's $4,700. Are
Yeah.
you kidding me? Like
Yeah.
it's got everything is replaceable. It's everything's
Normal
Bob
stuff.
standard. Yeah, the brake hoses are guided front to
UDH.
back. UDH.
Yeah, that's true.
Making
It
a
wasn't
lot
my
too much
favorite bike
sense.
here. Yeah,
I
it wasn't
don't
my
like this making sense thing.
Yeah, it wasn't my favorite bike here.
Yeah.
But like you chose the Corolla driver.
Yeah.
Especially with the tissue box in the back.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
That is.
I
that's
put mine in the center
pragmatism.
console.
So
Actually.
people can't see it. They don't know you're actually a 70-year-old man.
Can you just give this person this one thing with that bright blue? They want to have one.
It's their
spark of-
flair, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Well, here's the thing, though. You take your $3,000 that you save with the Lauf, and you go buy a sick wheel set. And
That's
then-
true.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, you
true.
could absolutely do that, and you'd still come in cheaper than that Roubaix.
Yeah, I think that does make sense.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say the BMC, but that does make
In my heart of hearts, I would choose the BMC.
Well,
That being said,
you're lucky because the next question is about your heart of hearts. I need you guys to pick overall favorite bike for each of you from this all-road field test before we close up our testing here and go home. Will,
Bike,
you got to give me a reason too, good reasons.
bike I would take home would probably be the BMC, just because it's the most well-rounded. I feel like I could replace my whole closet, like my whole bike shed, with just.
You don't want to do that though.
No, I don't. But if I were to have to, if I moved to, I mean, I'm blessed to have space for my bikes in the city, but like if I were to move somewhere where I don't have bike storage all of a sudden,
Yeah.
I'd be very happy with that one bike, and I don't feel like I'm really compromising that much.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's the winner for you here.
Yeah.
Okay, Alvin, what is your favorite bike from here? The bike you're going to leave here, you got to live with this thing for the next 3 years. No upgrades.
no upgrades. So I thought a lot about this, and more specifically, I thought about which bike kind of made me smile the most. And the more I thought about it, the more it was the Stinner. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on.
I had a lot of fun on that bike.
The Stinner didn't do particularly well in any of our challenges.
No.
It didn't seem to have any magic steel ride characteristics to
Yeah.
it. Why are you choosing this bike? I haven't seen you super excited about the Stinner. Why?
Yeah, I don't really know, honestly, but I had a lot of fun riding it. I remember that first ascent we did, like on that test loop, and I was just like, oh yeah, this is super fun. Like I could do everything I want on this.
Yep.
And it feels great.
Are you somebody who, I mean, I think you are, who appreciates something maybe a little different? Like you go outside to the bike path and spend 5 minutes and you will literally see 100 tarmacs go by, all with deep
Yes.
carbon wheels.
I own a tarmac with deep carbon wheels. That's my
He's
go
part of
fast
the
bike.
tarmac club, everybody.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah.
but
That is
like,
not a joke.
He
not
actually
the club.
is part of the group chat.
But I chose that. That was a pragmatic choice.
Yes.
To be clear, that wasn't me like.
But here you are picking a steel thing that's heavier and very different, and
Yeah, I mean it's not unlike what Josh is saying. The heart wants what the heart wants.
yeah,
I had a lot of fun on that bike.
the heart does want what the heart wants.
Yeah, and you know what? I was thinking like the end of like when we arrived at the Point Reyes Lighthouse, my hand was like a little bit numb. Like,
Yeah.
I was just like, man, this isn't as comfortable as the other bikes. But I was like,
I was about to ask if that
I had a lot
was
of
the
fun.
reason, because like when I first got on that bike, the fit for me just felt like it kind of fit like a glove, and then like after that, I'm like, well, maybe it doesn't ride as well as everything else, but like I feel very comfortable and at home on the
yeah,
Stinner.
I definitely felt at home
Yeah.
on it, which was so weird. Even though all those other bikes, I think, were just technically more competent.
Can we think of higher praise for a bike? Like, it's easy to say that this bike is awesome because it has this thing and that thing, and it does this, and it weighs this amount, this. But you feel at home after your very first initial first impression ride, 30-minute ride.
Yeah, tons of smiles too.
Yeah, and you liked it too, and like, that's something. That counts
Yeah,
for something.
that counts.
Yeah.
Yeah, kudos to Stinner.
Josh, I'm not looking for common sense here. Get out of here, Alvin.
There's no common sense happening over here.
Excellent. You're taking one bike home, you're living with it for 2-3 years, you're not upgrading it, it's your bike. You only have one of them.
Taking the Athos.
The Athos. You just
I-
told me you nearly got blew off the
Yeah, I
mountain
don't
20
care.
minutes ago.
I'm
Okay.
taking the Athos.
Yeah.
And here's the thing: when you ride an S-Works Athos, everyone thinks something, and they think, and I want to be out there.
I think a lot of different things possibly.
They think a lot of different things, and they're like, you can't go on long rides with that bike, and I'm gonna do it. And they're gonna go, oh well, you're just a dentist and you're slow, and I'm gonna crush them. And they, you know, there's none. It might not even be true. I'm gonna get crushed. Come on, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's inspiring. It's fun, and it makes you want to take it out and do foolish things. And that's really what I look for in a bike.
Now you're really speaking to
Yeah.
me now. I like it. I
Yeah.
like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're a glutton for punishment, obviously.
You know, I'm just here to say that it can be done when it can't, when people think it can't.
Yeah.
I like it. That's a great answer, Josh. Okay, we're about to wrap this up, but I want to ask each of you, what is one major takeaway? Josh, what is one major takeaway from this all-road field test?
Well, I appreciate being able to go first because that makes it easier. But I'm gonna say that, you know, I think you've all heard this before, but when you think about modern bikes, they are so good. We are looking at like amazing bikes, and all of them have their little differences. And it is quite astounding how different they are when you ride them back to back. But if you were to go into a store and buy this bike and take it home, any of them, you're going to have a good time. These are all good bikes.
Yeah, that makes sense. Will?
I think it's that the fact that the bike that feels the best at a certain thing, what you perceive in like it as like riding, you might think it's the fastest at this thing. It very often might just be the exact opposite of that, but
Clock never lies.
the placebo is very important of like how
Yeah.
you feel in the bike or how much you enjoy it, and that might just be more important than how fast you're actually going in any of these things.
Yeah,
'Cause
yep.
most of the time we're not racing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, I mean, that brings us back to Alvin's choice of this dinner,
Yep.
right? Alvin, what's a big takeaway for you?
I really want to see more of these all-road bikes with bigger tire clearance.
Okay.
I want them to keep going. I want them to adopt
More.
like gravel geometry, like gravel race geometry with lighter tube sets.
Okay.
That's what I want.
Okay, so now I think our next field test just needs to be taking all these like road, like race-oriented gravel bikes and then just putting road wheels on them, and we're gonna test like
Go the other direction.
Yeah, test that. We're just gonna try and do a Da Vinci hatchet. Like,
Yeah.
I think I'm going to start
comparison
doing it on
test.
all of the like racy gravel bikes in general.
Yeah.
And see what happens.
Like I was thinking I rode the Trek Checkmate earlier this year, and now I'm like I want to try that with the road wheels on it. I should have done that, but
Interesting.
was a good bike.
I think it's pretty crazy what all of these bikes are capable of by even leaving them stock or switching a few little things, and
Yeah.
it's insane what a modern road bike is capable of and where it can take you and what it can do, right?
Amen.
absolutely.
Amen. All right, let's end there. I hope you guys all enjoyed Velo's all-road field test. If we did everything right, this is probably the last video, so I can't even say stay tuned for more videos. We're done.
We're done.
That's it. I hope you enjoyed everything that we've done here. We've had a ton of fun for the most part.
I still had a good time.
He still had a good time. He's a very good
Yeah,
sport.
you've come back.
He came back.
Of my own free will.
Yeah, we did. Exactly. I'm surprised you came back and are sitting beside me, to be honest. Let us know if you guys have any questions. Put them down underneath the videos and we'll get in there and answer them. And that's it for us, I guess, eh?
Yeah.
Let's go get some dinner.
Yeah.
Let's get
Yeah.
some dinner,
Yeah.
boys.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Cut.